Okay, so the last two videos we've kind of gone over some basic physics and how to make some blocks and how to make blocks interact with each other and kind of a lot of the fundamentals of how to write a script and how to apply a force to an object. And if you really like that kind of style of game we were making, where it's bit simplified, just a block moving around and dodging things, then you can. And what I really recommend is that you jump across now to the playlist that's been added to your OneNote for the classes, or if you're not following along from my coding class, it's the Bracky's YouTuber does a really good series called How to Make a Game, and he makes a really nice kind of goes through all of like the game over winning levels, making levels, really kind of 10-minute videos, 8-minute videos, kind of each really small and really simplified and really great for that. But I thought, I'm going to continue making and have a go at making, because I've not made it myself yet. It's something a little bit more kind of visually appealing, and we'll look at some more kind of fun things you can do within the 3D kind of game making world. So to start with, the first thing I'm going to have to do is we're going to find some assets, because I'm not an artist or a creative, so I'm not very good at drawing or making 3D models with Blender. So I'm going to try and steal someone else's, use someone else's work. So if you go Windows and you open the Asset Store, you'll get an Asset Store window. And obviously now it's online, so you go search online and you will get this page just here. If you click on 3D, you'll limit to 3D, and obviously free, because we don't want to have to pay for anything. And 3. And what we're going to use is, I really like the look of some of this polypack stuff. It kind of just looks like it might be fun to use and a bit simplified. And if any of you have used like the Polybridge game in your Steam class or anything like that, it will be very kind of familiar to you, the way it looks. I've got some fun little vehicles and stuff, so I'm going to add that to my assets. I'm going to open it up in Unity. This is a fresh Unity game. If your computer's lacking space and you're a bit worried about that kind of stuff, then obviously what you can do is you can just delete everything in the previous one by just selecting it and clicking the delete button, and then we'll be back here. But this is a fresh game for me. So we clicked on it, open in Unity, and it opened up in the package manager window. And then you'll have all your existing kind of packages that you've used before. So you'll notice that I've got a couple just here, and then obviously the new one will just appear in the list. So low poly cars, and you click download, and it will start downloading that. And then you click import, and then this little window here, you click import, and hopefully a little folder will appear here called low poly cars. It's got something else, but it doesn't matter. And then we're gonna go back to our store, because I saw another one by actually by the same maker that I quite liked the look of, to potentially make some roads. And it was called Low Poly Road Pack. Really simplified. It's also by Broken Vector, so obviously the same maker. And we thank him for his hard rendering time. Add to my assets, and then it'll do the same thing. Open in Unity, and it'll appear. Then we'll click download on that one, and then it'll download. Come on, NBN, do your good stuff. Thank you. Import. This one's obviously a little bit bigger than the previous one. And we're going to assume it's all in the same folder. Shady Road Pack Car Pack. Yeah, awesome. Organized itself. I'm still going to create a folder for assets, because I'm like that. And I'm going to put them in there, because we might end up using more assets later on. And I'm just going to start straight away by creating a folder for my scripts, by creating a folder for my prefabs, and creating a folder for my materials. Okay. So now I have to kind of start building something, thinking about what I want to create. And so you can kind of look through your assets pack. We've got the car and the road pack, and obviously it comes with a shader pack, so you can if you look at their prefabs, you can see they've got quite a good number of cars they've pre-made, and you can see if you just drag them onto the kind of plane, you can kind of have a look at what they look like, which is kind of cool. Very kind of like nicely done. I'm quite happy with them. They look quite cool. Obviously they've got their custom shaders that the person's done a lot of hard work on to make them. Obviously as well, if you don't want to use the prefabs, they have models, like the blank unshaded models, and you could probably add a material to them if you wanted to. You could do that in a couple of different ways. You can do it this way, create material. We're not going to name it because we're not going to keep it. Make it like a red, and you can drag that onto the object. But obviously, it's not going to look very good because we've got a red car. Make its windows red as well. Obviously, the cars are a composite object. They're not a single object, and the reason they've done that obviously is so that you could put animations and physics to the wheels of them, which is kind of cool. But that's just something to think about. Obviously, we're not going to do that right now. And then if you go back into the assets folder, into our broken, you can see the road pack. They have prefabs as well. You can see that if I drag something like that into it, it's a huge kind of pre-built road, which is really cool with like a thing. You've got, what else we got? We got like, whoa, it's gonna be huge. We got like highway bridges and all kinds of stuff. And the other thing to have a look at is if you're kind of like wondering, oh, what's it gonna all look like? What kind of things can I do? Quite often, a lot of the packs will have like a demo kind of scene, and here we have a demo scene. You can look at down it from above, kind of have a look at what it looks like from above. They've, and then you can kind of, let's maybe zoom in on map, kind of zoom in. You can see they've got multiple laned highways, big roofs and wings and houses. Just kind of cool. Just something to kind of look at. And then, once again, inside the pack, you can see they've got landscapes. They've got the pre-builts for the houses. They've got mountains in there for you. That's their materials. They've got their models if you want to use the colors and the base kind of stuff for them, obviously. And then, obviously, once again, they've got their prefabs where they've done some coloring and some changing for you. So I played around with it for a little bit, which I really suggest you guys do, and I made myself a little bit of a car park kind of thing. So the way I did that is I just went to my assets. Remember, I made my assets folder. I went into our poly thing and into prefabs, and I just grabbed some of the parking lot squares and kind of dragged them into place, and then kind of use them from there. We might do like another kind of corner now to kind of demonstrate for you. I had so if we have, that's not the right corner. We want so what I want is I want like a blank corner like this one here. So kind of drag it onto the arena. Obviously it's not all in line, so I've been working at the plank level of 1, so changing that to 1. And now I can kind of move it. And as you zoom out using the roller on my thing, you can kind of see it's on the right location. So you want to think about, I want to rotate it like this way. And just think about your degrees and your... so we're rotating at 90 degrees. Kind of think about, your circle. And if you're a bit bad with that, it's okay. You can probably look it up somewhere on the internet, but... like that was a flip of 90 degrees. You could just play around with it if you're a bit bad at it. And I kind of just line it up. The other thing, and kind of looks kind of okay. I mean, there's a couple of glitches you can see where I haven't perfectly lined it up, but to be honest, when you're actually in-game, you won't really see that as much. That looks a bit better. You can also kind of replicate your other parts. So, like, you kind of see here how this is at these coordinates. Well, you need to know, if you know your axes, you know Y is coming out of the screen towards us. So, obviously, we don't want to look at those numbers. They should both be 1, which they are. And then you have Z is this way and X is this way, right? So we want to make sure that the numbers on their X-axis are relatively the same. So if I see I have 8.27 here, if I copy that number, you can see how they're all 8.27. That means this one's not quite perfectly lined up. So if I press paste, 8.27, now it should be at the exact same kind of coordinates along that axis there for me. And now, obviously, if I wanted to just replace all of this just here, I could just select it all and copy it and then flip it. But we're going to try and see if we can give it a bit of a parking lot entrance, maybe. So we want an entrance to a parking lot. Obviously, we want this at Y1, and we want to move it up to where we kind of want to put it. It's not a perfect world, but because we don't actually. Do you know what we might actually use? We might use whatever this parking lot entrance, but there's like, where's the road join? I saw it 2 seconds ago. Parking lot entrance, road join. No, I have to use parking lot entrance, I think. I just don't like it because obviously the make is obviously intended us to make a slightly larger parking lot that we bothered to make. So this one has as if they could park along this way, which we're not going to bother doing. So it's going to look a little weird, but that's okay. So obviously we now want to flip this. Instead of going this way this time, we want to go the opposite direction. Because obviously we want this to face out so the person can drive out. So that would be a negative 90 degree rotation. So we put negative 90 and it will flip the direction we want it to flip. And then we can kind of line it up. As you can see what I mean by it being a bit weird, because obviously it's going to have this kind of, these lines that aren't going to quite make sense because we don't have parks that way. And it's going to look a bit ordinary. So if this was on the same x-axis, that means these are on the same z-axis. So you can kind of see how they don't, boop, boop. Just something to think about. XX. And then we kind of just want an edge. So parking lot edge. That's a corner. Let's find an edge. Parking lot. We just want a blank edge, don't we? Like this. Make it 1. Move it up. Once again, we want to rotate it. This time 180 degrees because we want to fully flip it. So if I go rotate 180 and bring it down, you can kind of see. Except I think... Edit, undo, move. Did I rotate them all in the y-axis? I did. Interesting, interesting, interesting. So in reality, I think what I did wrong there was, if I go back to 0, I don't actually want to rotate it in the y-axis, do I? Or maybe I do. Let's just delete that object. I've just been default rotating in the y-axis, I think. I think the reason I was... take it back to 1. I'm worried that this is upside down now, but maybe it's not. I don't know. We'll find out when we put a car on it, I guess. Because I feel like in reality what we want to do is we're rotating it. You can rotate it like this, and... No, it is a y-axis rotation, so it's fine. Apparently. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Okay. All good. We're all fine. Don't mind the... So then we're kind of just going to line this up. We'll make this the same as that. So this is going to be minus 2.19. Is that what it was? No, it was 9.1. Don't mind me. 9.1. Okay, and then obviously this one is still not working. I think this piece might, because this should be like 2.91. What happens to it? It goes all the way down there, about minus 2.91. Goes even further down. So this one's not operating very. So we're gonna have to do this by hand. Just zoom in a little bit. Move back to the selection tool, just kind of play around with it. We might even end up just ditching this piece, we'll see. So then you've got kind of like doing a bit of an entrance, and then what I can just do is I can go Control C, and I can just go Control C, and then Control V, and I've got a duplicate of it. And then, I can obviously just move this piece into its location, and then this one out, and then kind of close the gap. And then this one I want to rotate once, twice. So if I go to 0, it'll be there. And then I want to rotate once that direction, so it's once minus 90. If you kind of see like that. I don't know if... And then another minus 90. And then we got there. If the rotation's not kind of getting it for you, you don't get how I'm knowing the numbers, then that's okay. You can kind of just play around with it a little bit. So what's this? 3.99. Okay, so we have our car park. Kind of cool. Got a bit of a car park going on. You know, little entrance, weird looking entrance, but it's a car park nonetheless. Obviously, the game's not looking at the car park. You can kind of see that at the moment. But we can kind of change that. So if I don't really like where the directional light is in my hierarchy. If I were to add an asset that we all know that I love. So package manager, Unity registered, Sin Machine, install. And we'll get there when I'm there. So now Cinema Machine is installed. We can go create our virtual camera, obviously, like we always do, and we've added our virtual camera. Now, on top of that, we're obviously also going to have to add a game object for it to focus on in some way. And for now, we're just going to go into our assets pack, and we're going to go into our cars pack and go into our prefabs pack and have a look at the cars. All right, let's pick a little, like, I don't know, little red kind of beetle-y kind of mini looking car. Make sure it's at 1. And so if you kind of have a look, 1's inside. So let's edit, undo selection change. Edit, undo selection change. Move it back out too. Maybe it default put it on, so we're fine. On ground level. So we have a car, and then obviously we can go into our cinema machine and we can select our car red. Maybe we want to rename this player. And just for ourselves, and then click on our cinema machine and we can just drag the player into follow and look at. And now hopefully in the game you can see that in the game screen we're looking at our car. Pretty cool. So I mean, now that we're looking at the car, we can do some changes to kind of make it how we like. If we go into the cinema machine, you can click on lens here and get some lens and transition kind of information. And you know, if we want to make it look at bird's eye, we can take it up in the air and, you know, kind of, I've got an offset, do I? That's right, sorry. And look at the top of the car. This should be default 000. I'd already changed it. I was mucking around with it earlier. 000, and kind of, you know, look at it from above. You can kind of, that's a little bit too close, but like, you can change it so that maybe you're looking behind -5, getting like a point, like a you know, kind of like a, you know, like a third person view of the car. And, you know, down here, this is the aim. So, like, this is like what it's looking at up here in your body. And then you can, like, the aim of the camera. So if I wanted to, like, I can put this to the side of the camera, or I can, like, maybe put the camera to look in front. So, and I can maybe change the offset a little bit, like -7, and we're kind of looking in front of the car as we're driving, kind of like you would in a car racing game. I kind of like that kind of look. You can bring the camera in a little bit even more, so like maybe you don't want to see the back lights or something. I kind of like that view, and then if we press play, it's going to take a second, but obviously it was select off the camera, so we can kind of see that we can see the front of the car. It's kind of what we want. Now, in the previous kind of video, we talked a little bit about motion. And I just kind of want to show you what happens if you do motion the wrong way. So at the moment, when you start using other people's objects and not default objects, physics gets a lot more complicated because, you know, if it's drawn, you need to make sure that the colliders. So quite often we don't use colliders as much on objects when in the same way when they're kind of more complex, because otherwise I don't really want it colliding with the ground. I kind of just, it doesn't really work. And I'll kind of show you a couple of things. So if I go to my player and I add, I don't want a script, I want to add you know, a rigid body, so we have a bit of physics to it. I can press play on that. And you kind of can see that we have our car, and it's kind of like sunk into the ground a little bit, and it's kind of annoying. It doesn't quite look right. I mean, as a player, you probably couldn't tell that it's sunk into the ground, so it might be an okay thing. It's up to you. So if we select our player, what we can do is we can use gravity off and see what that does. And you'll see that if I change my scene view now, he hasn't sunk into the ground. He's staying on top like he was before, which is something you can think about. And then we've got our player again, obviously. So now he's got a bit of physics to him. We don't have gravity on right now, but he still has a rigid body. So we can do what we did last kind of video. We can go new script, and we can call it player movement. I don't know why I clicked off then. So again, we can go new script, we can call it player movement, and we can create an ad. And we're going to add this script to him called player movement. And then obviously it's going to appear over here, and we can drag it into our scripts folder, and we can... it's really not liking me right now, is it? And then we can double click on it, and we can open up our script, and we've got our script. And of course, it's just like the previous script. We've still got our void start method and our void update method, and we can just delete this too because we're not using those, and we have our using Unity engine, and we can do the exact same thing we did last class. And in fact, I'm literally just going to get last class's script up. You can see it just here. And I can literally just do this. I can do Control C, copy it. I can come across. Where's this? Here it is. And I can just press enter. I can paste it and go back to it, and I can go, oh, I had all this, didn't I? Copy it. Go back to this, and I can just literally just go, paste. No errors, nothing's wrong, all fine. Control save, right? Simple as that. So this is the exact same script we used last time to create movement. We will use the input get key. We had a force applying to the front of it and stuff like that. But obviously this time we're doing a car kind of driving game, so obviously we don't want to just have a force being applied forwards to it. Or maybe you do, depending on what kind of game. But for this, like, let's pretend we don't want that. So we're going to input dot get key. I'm going to go that, and then we're going to go that. I'm going to go W. Then we've got these. I'm going to take that. We're going to cut it, and we're going to paste it in between. Okay. Up one row. Back a tab. Just like that. And then of course we can just copy that again, Control C, Control V, but this time we want S, and this time we want negative forward force. Awesome. Okay, so literally I've got S and W being back and forward. Really simple, just same kind of method. RB.add force, same thing, I can press S, save. Now, then we can go into our game. It'll take a second to load. We can click on our player. Our script should all be ready. Once again, remember we have to drag our RB into the rigid body. And then maybe change it to 500 to start with. And then if we press play... Oh, I should mention... I did rotate the car. Minus 90. So that it was facing this way. So it was facing the same... along an axis. You'll see why. If you hadn't, you'd be moving... Your SAD would be moving it weirdly, and you can just solve that by renaming them. But I just moved the vehicle so that it was aligned with the same axis as the game's axis, because previously it was aligned. Its forward and back was your left and right, so I just rotated the car so it was right. But now you can kind of see that if I press forwards and backwards, did I actually set? Movement RB. You can see as we press forwards and backwards, our car's kind of moving, which is, it doesn't look too bad. Don't get me wrong. The movement's a bit like that, and then as you can see, we float. But it's alright. I can come back. I press space by accident. Oh no. Forever. And I can click use gravity, and then, oh no, it's all going to end very badly for our car. And if I click use gravity, you can see that I can't move now. No use gravity. I think the game's not going to like the fact that I'm putting gravity on and off. Space. And then I can click use gravity. I'm gonna fall. Boom. And you can see the issue with not having gravity on is obviously space doesn't work. But press play again. You can see that any changes you make while you're in play, by the way, don't hold, so you can test things out in thing. But you can see the couple of the issues we have is one is that the movement is very weird. It's very I went over an edge and I'm gonna flip now. You can see that also my car doesn't turn; it can kind of glide sideways. Yeah. And its movement is it's slidey. It's because there's no friction or anything applied to the object because it doesn't actually have a rigid body on it. Now, and you can kind of see that no gravity means that I'm kind of floating about a little bit. Now, if I put gravity on from the start and then press play, I don't move at all because if you remember, I'm stuck in the ground with my wheels. But let's see if I give myself this is kind of the trial and error kind of stuff. We've added gravity on. What happens if I give myself a forward force of 2,000? Can I overcome being stuck in the object? I can. And whoa, what a flip. So with gravity on, obviously, I need a bit more force to move. Which kind of makes more sense. It makes sense. But I can still move. Once again, I changed it in-game, so it's gone back to what it was before. Which is cool. And you can kind of play around with it. but you can kind of see that the physics, it doesn't really work. Obviously, with gravity on, I actually do stop now, which is kind of good. So it's not as slidey. And I can kind of... I mean, you can play around with it. You can have some cool collisions. I'm rotating, flipping all about. But this isn't the ideal method of movement. You can kind of see that, like, you know, there are a couple of things we need to think about. Well, one thing that you can do, and one thing is that... outside of game, I'm going to actually change it to 2000. Is it one thing you need to think about and problem solve, like, what do I want? Okay, so... when I press... Depending on the kind of game you want to make and how, like, car racy you want to make it. When I press D, I currently move sideways, right? Do I... I rolled my car. When I press D, I move sideways, don't I? Now, do I want D to move my car left, right, or do I want D to turn my car? And so maybe I want to go back into the script, and maybe I want to affect its rotation with D. So D will rotate my car slightly. Or maybe I do want to make it very arcadey, and when I press D, I want to fully flip my car 90 degrees and have it go that way. That is what we now need to problem solve. So when we kind of had this issue where the object, the car, we could go left and right, we could go forward, but we couldn't really like turn around a corner very well and effectively. And obviously that's a bit of a problem. And it's something that needs a bit of problem solving and stuff like that. So one of the ways that I was thinking about problem solving this situation we talked about is maybe rotating the car. Now, I've done that for us, so I can kind of show you. If we use transform.rotate, that changes the transform and rotates this particular object. And then you can transform in a couple of different ways. You can add like three numbers, so 0, 0, 15, if you want to transfer it to single axis. Or you can use a vector. Now, don't worry so much what a vector is if you don't know what a vector is, but basically it has a component for each of the axes, and it's a kind of math or physics term, and it's a good way of kind of rotating thing. And you can see that this vector is a 0, 1, 0. So basically it has a 0 in the X, a 1 in the Y, and a 0 in the Z. And you could change this again, but you could put down, it would be that kind. And basically, so vector 3 means it's a 3-dimensional vector, and it is a 1 in the forward direction. And then I've times that by a new float, which I've added, which is like 15, and then I've times by times.delta time. And I've added that to our A and D. So basically, that's just really quickly what I've done. And if we go into our game, I've turned turn up to 50, because I've done a bit of trial and erroring on this. And I press play, and you can kind of see that it rotates my object now. Now, unfortunately, this still hasn't solved the problem that we wanted, and that's because I can rotate the object and face this way to go around the corner and press. But if I press forwards, it still takes me forwards here, because the way that we're currently applying movement to it, the object, is still the same way where we're applying a force to the center of the object in a direction. So the center of the object actually hasn't changed. Therefore, the force is still being applied in the same direction. Now, it's cool. It lets us rotate, and then we could change that, but obviously, this hasn't fixed our problem. But that's okay. So, when we come back for next lesson, what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at making a game that I used to play as a child, a little bit, and it's called Crazy Taxi. And so we don't actually have to be able to rotate in Crazy Taxi, but I do want to kind of leave that out with you guys to think about for a little bit at home. Is like, how would I fix this problem? What ways? So you know that already that I can kind of access... The way we're doing force at the moment is I'm just literally applying a force to the rigid body of the object. But you can see that I accessed a component of my object, the transform component, which tells me position, rotate, and scale of my object. Now, I want you to think that if I can do that, is there another way that I could move an object? I can rotate an object with transform.rotate. what would happen if I did transform dot position? So I want you to think about that and maybe trial that at yourselves a little bit, seeing how movement works with it in that direction. Because next lesson, we're going to move on to maybe looking at making a silly kind of car game using these two. So don't delete this this level or anything like that. Definitely don't delete your car, because we're going to get rid of the parking lot and we're going to start building a little bit of a fun kind of racetrack for our next lesson.